Welcome everybody. In this video, we're going to cover the mediator pattern. The idea behind the pattern is very simple. We are going to dissect it a little bit, but there is already a very popular library that does implement this pattern called Mediator. The library is very easy to use and it does provide a very clean organizational level to your code. In this video, we're not going to be discussing the Mediator library. I already have a video for that, so if you want to check it out, link is going to be in the description. In this video, we're going to talk about the idea behind Mediator. The problem that it aims to solve is the interaction between two components or two objects. If we take a real-world example, for example, two humans, one is a cashier, another one is the customer. Customer gives the product to the cashier, cashier scans it, looks up at the total price, asks for the money, customer gives the money. And then we can have a different scenario, for example, a doctor and a patient. The doctor can be a surgeon and the patient can be on the table and the surgeon is performing a heart operation or something like that. So the interaction between the two objects will essentially be functions. They will somehow need to reference each other. And you can think of the human being able to be a customer, a cashier, a doctor, and a patient. Will have a very messy relationship between these objects. So the mediator aims to take the interaction between the two objects, a cashier and a customer, and centralize that interaction. That centralized interaction is what we're going to refer to as the context. In the context of the checkout, we are going to have a cashier and a customer. In the context of a surgery room, we're going to have a surgeon and a patient. The interaction in these two contexts between the two objects, they're humans, but they do play different roles, is going to be different. So remember, the point of Mediator is to centralize interaction between objects. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section. The implementation detail for this will look something like this. We will have an interface which will describe the iMediator. In our case, the iMediator is the name of the pattern. When you're going to be implementing it, don't call it by the pattern name, call it by its intent. Make sure it's descriptive. What is the context in which this is happening? Is it a surgery room? Is it the checkout? Is it a battlefield? What is going on here, right? In our case, this is just the mediator. So within the mediator, as the centralized context for what can happen, we can have like some pieces, some parts, some things, essentially the little components that are going to be interacting. Those are the humans. That will be the customer. That will be the cashier. That will be the surgeon. The army dude, etc. Whatever other profession you can think of. So Mediator does not take care of giving each individual role to each individual object. Okay, so we do not go ahead and give the doctor role to the human in order to make it that specific role to have those particular functions. So Mediator's main concern is centralizing the interaction between the objects. So this is where the interaction happens. We then have our particular piece, our part, and our thing. Each of them receives an instance of the iMediator, and whatever interaction they essentially want to invoke on the other ones, they trigger it through the mediator. As soon as the piece invokes the interaction can then act upon the piece, the part, or the thing, essentially any component within the mediator. Compared to the Mediator library, this is a very concrete implementation. But let's take a look at a little bit more of a simpler example if this was a little bit too generic in terms of its names. So without Mediator, we would have logic A, our cashier, and it would have to hold a reference to logic B, which is our customer. And we would have to perform some kind of operation like ask for money and then put a request for money into the customer, and then the customer would then have to trigger its own function. And you can see how both of these would have to have a reference to each other and trigger each other's functions in succession. Now enter the mediator. Now logic A, the doctor, contains mediator, which is the surgery room or a patient, I don't know, wherever, a doctor room, right? Wherever you're going to prescribe the medicine, or here is going to check your health. or temperature, whatever, doctor room, okay? So mediator is the doctor room. So we have the doctor, he's in the doctor room. And as long as we have the patient in the doctor's room, we can dynamically trigger whatever logic we want. We can check his pulse, check his breathing, and you know, when you go check your breathing, it's like on the customer or on the patient, you gotta go say and then the guy goes and then you go breathe deeply and go. All right, so issues command, and then logic B, the patient performs the command, right? This all happens within the medical room or doctor's room, okay? And what happens in the doctor's room stays in the doctor's room, okay? Now, going a little bit further into the problem, maybe a more real-world example, I still wouldn't consider this very well thought out example, because generally, if you're watching my tutorials, this does tend to be more on the back end, but this problem is more on the front end. And on the back end, we have Mediator, and that is very decoupled, very message-based implementation. It's very generic and it's very easy to use. So I highly recommend to go check out that library. But in this example, we have a product, an object, and then we have a cart. So again, somewhere where we can put products, and then we have a catalog. So the things that we can purchase. So we can grab things from the catalog and we can put them in our cart. This has to happen somewhere. So we put that catalog and that cart behind the product page, and they kind of live here. They kind of live in the product page. So the product page now relies on having catalog and cart. So there is now essentially heavy dependency here between the objects and the interaction between the objects. So let's say we want to add a product to cart on our product page. This scripts the interaction where we get a product from a catalog and we put it in our cart. This logic is no longer reusable anywhere within our shop. I don't know if you've visited much online shops, but you are able to add products from multiple places within the website, right? On the front page, just add to cart, or then you visit the actual product with the big description and you find a button there to add to cart, or you can press the plus button, minus button to increase or decrease quantity. So you can add and remove products in many different ways from many different places. And also the way that we display the products, we have to have a reference to the catalog. And this is the catalog which is within our shop. We do not have the option of importing products from somewhere else and injecting them into our shop, right? The way that YouTube does with Teespring. And for some reason, they don't allow third-party integrations. I don't know, some trust issues, whatever. Enter the solution. We still have a product, but now we are centralizing the shop context. The shop context is the thing that holds the cart, the catalog, the product page. It is the thing that pulls everything together, like the Spider-Man and the scene when he's like holding the train or whatever. So yeah, it has all of those things, and then it goes ahead and also injects the product into the product page, and it essentially contains a add to cart function, which is like a proxy function to the add to cart. The cart is the same, the catalog is the same. Really, it's not real implementations here, it's just to illustrate the idea. So as long as you can imagine that we have these components and you are just centralizing the interaction between those components. Do not try to go back to your code and force things into this pattern. Just understand that at some point the interaction between your components is going to look muddled. But right now, what's going to happen is we just receive a shop context. If the catalog or the cart can do something along the lines of we at the checkout, we basically purchased the last product, a catalog will say it just ran out of a product, and it will broadcast it to the shop context. The shop context can then go into each individual cart and clear out that product because we no longer have it, right? And in the shops, we assume that we sort of have infinite amounts of product, or you get a lock on the product. But anyway, that's implementation detail. The point is that the product page has now access to the shop context, and on there, it will be able to add the cart. We can take this a step further and forget about a shop context. We can hide it behind an interface like cart interaction. So we can either hide the cart behind an interface or then later upgrade to a shop context. And again, if you are struggling to imagine where to use this pattern, think of the facade pattern. If you haven't watched that video, I recommend you go watch it. We essentially have many components, they know how to talk to each other, and what we do with facade, we essentially put that interaction in a box, we push it down, and then we can access the facade as like a very, very convenient thing to use to interact with the subsystem. If we take a look at the subsystem, the way that it interacts is we essentially have a spider web with dependencies going in every direction. There is no structure there. Mediator is more or less meant to bring structure to that. It will take the spider web between the components, so you have like 10 components and lines are going from all of those components. It will find the interactions, the common interactions between those components, and centralize the points to which the lines come to. You will generally spot this behavior when you have many components trying to perform a single task. This will either be a lot of nested components and a lot of components running side by side. At that point, just think of a task that you're trying to perform or the context in which it's happening. A checkout, a rocket launch, a deployment procedure. Think of the context, create that context, and make sure that that context contains the interaction between the swarm of components that you have. This will be it for this video. Hopefully you understand the mediator pattern of centralizing interaction between objects. If you did enjoy the video, leave a like, subscribe, and as always, if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. Have a good day.